I'm flying high, but I got a feeling I'm falling.
What's up guys, my name is Courtney Budzyn and this is What's for Din. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make one of my favorite things of all time. I'm going to be showing you how to make old-fashioned chicken and dumplings. Now this is very special to me because my grandma Susie would make these all the time when I was a kid, and just the smell of her cooking it just made me so happy. She's really special to me, but unfortunately she passed away about 9 years ago. But my grandma made a killer chicken and dumplings the old-fashioned way from scratch. And even though she didn't leave me the exact measurements of this recipe, this to me is as close as it gets. It tastes spot on to me, or at least from what I can remember. And I know for a fact you guys will absolutely love this. So the ingredients are really simple. All you're gonna need is some all-purpose flour, some melted butter, and then I have some homemade chicken stock here. And if you want a recipe for how to make your own homemade chicken stock, just click on the card that popped at the top of the screen and you can see my recipe for it. You really, really, really want to use homemade, because homemade is just going to taste way better in this, because if you get the store-bought, it's not going to have the same effect, because the shining star in this is the homemade chicken broth that seasons the dumplings, because we're actually going to use that broth in making the dumplings. So just my 2 cents. Then you're also going to need some shredded chicken. You can use a rotisserie chicken, or you can just use the chicken that you used to make your stock, and that's what I'm doing. And then of course you need some salt and pepper, and that is it. Like, can it be any easier than this? I don't think so. So let's go over to the stove and we'll get started. So I put my stock in a large pot and I have it over medium-high heat so that I can break it down. And you can see the dark, rich color of that stock. That's why it's really important you just make your own with this recipe. Otherwise, I can't guarantee it's gonna taste that great. So we're gonna wait for this to come up to a simmer, and we're gonna use some of this stock to make our dumplings. And while we're waiting, we can go ahead and make our dumplings. So the first thing I wanna do is season our flour with a little bit of salt and pepper. Give that a whisk, and make sure you whisk your flour or you sift it before you make these. That way there's no clumps and it's nice and airy and fluffy. So in my flour, I'm gonna add my melted butter. I'm just gonna use a fork and mix that, or at least start to mix it in, because obviously it's not enough moisture. All right, that's good enough. That's about all we're gonna be able to mix. Now what I'm gonna do is take my chicken stock, my homemade chicken stock, and I'm gonna add a little bit right into the center at a time until it forms a ball. And this could be different for everybody. It's not an exact measurement, but I'll show you what it's supposed to look like once you're through. But don't be tempted to add too much stock. And if you do accidentally add too much stock, then you can just add a little bit extra flour and you'll be fine. So once it gets impossible to stir with a fork, you can go ahead and knead it a few times, but you don't want to go overboard, because if you mess with it too much, then your dumplings are going to be tough. So what I'm going to do is put this all out into a floured surface, and I'm just going to fold it together until it's nice and smooth. That's about what it should look like. It doesn't have to be perfect, because you're just going to cut them up anyway. I kind of pinch the bottom so you get a smooth surface. So I'm just going to dust my surface with some flour, because we're going to roll these out. Put a little flour on top. Okay, before I go any further with the dough, my stock is simmering, so I'm going to go ahead and add my chicken in. Give that a stir. So now it's real easy. All you got to do is roll these out. It doesn't have to be any particular shape. It can be whatever shape you want, because you're just going to cut them into dumplings anyway. So my grandma made her dumplings quite thin, and that's the way I'm used to it. You can really do whatever you want as far as thickness, but I make them about 1/4 of an inch thick. So the secret to making the sauce and the chicken and dumplings nice and thick is the flour that's actually on top of the dumplings. So I always add a little bit of flour to the top before I decide to cut them. And so now all I'm going to do is cut them into long strips, like so. Okay, and now I'm just cutting them across. So before we start dropping in our dumplings, you can go ahead and season your stock to taste with salt and pepper. I'm gonna add a little bit more salt and pepper because the chicken was not seasoned at all, because I just made it in the stock. And make sure you have it up to a boil. And once it's at a boil, we can start dropping in our dumplings. So what my grandma, I remember her saying when I was little, is to chase the boil. So wherever you see the most bubbles, that's where you put the dumpling at. And you just keep dropping them one by one until they're all in there. You can give it an occasional stir, but be very gentle. You don't want to break them apart. So that's all the dumplings in. Now all you have to do is let this simmer on medium-high heat for about 30 to 40 minutes. It could take a little bit longer depending on how thick or thin you made them. So just keep an eye on them. You can pull one out and test it with a fork and see if it's rubbery or if it's too thick. I like mine a little bit more on the mushy side, and the longer you allow these to simmer in here, the more thick the gravy is going to become. So that's why I like to leave it in a little bit longer than normal so I can put it over some mashed potatoes. So I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So this is what the finished product looks like. As you can see, the chicken really shreds up nicely. And I know it isn't the best thing to look at, but let me tell you, if you want some comfort food, this is your match. So I just put some of my chicken and dumplings on a bed of mashed potatoes and use the gravy that it creates as the gravy from the mashed potatoes. It's absolutely delicious. And I just decorated it with a little bit of fresh parsley. Look at that. Oh yeah. Just like Grandma used to make. But this is so stinking good, you gotta try it. And if you want the recipe, just look below in the description box because I list all the measurements and the written instructions. And if you did like this video, don't forget to smack that like button. And if you're not already subscribed, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I have many other videos to come. And as always, thank you so much for hanging out with me, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
I've got a feeling I'm falling for nobody else but you. You caught my eye, and I've got a feeling I'm falling.